Welcome everybody who's logging in for the Point in Time Count Community Forum. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. It is 6 o'clock, and so I want to just thank everybody who is on the webinar so far for joining us tonight to participate in the Point in Time Count Online Community Forum. We're going to be talking about the 2020 Point in Time Count. My name is Laura Ellsworth. I'm the Strategic Partnerships Manager for Council for the Homeless. Before we begin, just some quick housekeeping. All attendees have been muted and your camera or video is off, so you are not being seen. So I just want to encourage everybody, if you're new to GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar, there is something called a control panel that should have shown up on the upper right side of your screen when you logged on. You'll see a little red arrow, and that is going to either show or hide your control panel. So you can click on that, and then when you do that, you can see that there is a chat function down at the bottom. And this is how we're going to ask questions and do some Q&A towards the end of our meeting tonight. So we do have a wonderful intern, Sarah. Sarah, if you could just wave to everybody. She is an MSW intern at Council for the Homeless, and she's going to be monitoring the chat box. So if you think of things as we're going along, feel free to put that in the chat box. We'll do our best to go back to that as we go along tonight. And finally, this forum is going to be recorded and shared afterwards. So you can definitely go back, afterwards if there's anything you weren't sure about the first time around. So I'd also like to just point out that we do have some handouts available for you, which you can access under the handouts menu on your control panel. So feel free to take a look at those at your leisure. You can even actually download them if you'd like to your computer and look at them later. They're also available on our website too. So, but they're there for your convenience if you would like them. So just a review of our agenda for tonight. We're going to talk about the point in time count for 2020. Identify some trends that we are seeing, and then we're going to hear from our panelists tonight. They'll each answer some questions, and then we will do a poll of all of you, so a little interactive activity for you tonight, just right in the middle when maybe you're getting sleepy. So we'll make sure you're still with us. And then after that, we'll move into a community conversation with the panelists. So we'll do some questions and answers. So again, feel free to put your questions in the chat box. And then lastly, we'll end tonight with a community call to action. So we definitely have a lot to do in 1 hour. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to introduce you first to our panelists tonight. We're lucky enough to have Dale Whitley with Council for the Homeless, Jillian Deladen from Share Vancouver, Suzanne Straub from CMAR Community Services Northwest, and David Bilby from Go Connect Safe Park. Okay, so jumping right in, what is the point in time count? Well, it's an annual count of people who are experiencing homelessness, and it's a one-night snapshot. It's required by the Washington Department of Commerce and HUD. This year, HUD only requires it every other year, but this year, Washington Department of Commerce actually requires it every year, so this just happened to be their year. The point in time count is mainly, it's very useful in terms of identifying trends around people experiencing homelessness, and identifying demographics, and it helps us enable better planning and funding determinations, and making sure that we're using the resources that we do have in the ways that are most helpful. It's also just the best available data, but it is a single night snapshot, so it's not a picture of homelessness throughout the year, and it's not an overall picture of everybody experiencing homelessness in Clark County. Another thing to note about the point in time count is that this does not include people who are doubled up or couch surfing. Some of you may wonder, well, why is it done? This year it was done on Thursday, January 30th, and it's required to be done the last week of January. So that's why it's done that time of year. So on the same day as the point in time count, we do something called Project Homeless Connect as well, which we work a lot with David on that. And this is a one-day resource fair that's targeted to people who are homeless or unstable in their housing. And for the past 6 years, Project Homeless Connect has been held at St. Joseph Catholic Church. And those who attend Project Homeless Connect are asked to fill out the point in time count survey. They also get some basic needs met while they're there: medical care, eye care, dental care, clothing, haircuts, a warm meal, and they get connected to services while they're there as well. We have most all of the homeless crisis response system service providers are at Project Homeless Connect waiting to talk to folks. This year, for the first time, we also partnered with the Humane Society for Southwest Washington and held a pet wellness clinic on the same day at the Navigation Center. And that was really great. We were able to serve 26 dogs and 12 cats that day, which was great. Okay, so talking about the numbers and some trends. Overall, the total number of people experiencing homelessness on this date compared to last year went down by 4%. The number of people experiencing chronic homelessness, however, went up 23%. And 24% of people in our community who are experiencing homelessness are people of color. Also noteworthy is that the number of people fleeing domestic violence this year compared to last year went up 12%. And the number of people who are unsheltered in our community also went up. We're going to talk about this more later and dive a little deeper into that, as well as the fact that, you know, people in shelter also went down. And then just one last thing, of the people identified, a little over half were men and a little less than half were women. And I just point that out because there's often a stereotype that, you know, all people who are homeless are men. So one of the areas that remained relatively stagnant and even went down a little bit, a couple of the areas actually, are families with children and veterans. And this is an example of the success of our Veterans by Name list that has been going now for a while. Basically, it is a really targeted, personalized way of serving veterans who are experiencing homelessness, where all of the service providers in the area, like back when we could have in-person meetings, would get together in a room and just literally go name by name down the list of people that they'd identified and they're working with to check in on them, see what's going on, what partners they can connect with, and how best to serve them. And then families with children. This, you know, is really due to a strong partnership with all of the homeless school liaisons from the Clark County school districts. And they work really closely with the students in their schools and their families and help them get connected to services and meet basic needs, and also provide data to the HMIS system so that we get an accurate count of the situation with them. And then just taking another moment to focus in a little bit more on youth. So you'll see on this slide that the number of young adults aged 18 to 24 experiencing homelessness actually increased by 24%. That's the orange line there on the graph. And on the surface, that can seem very alarming, but in reality, the majority of this increase can be attributed to the Vancouver Housing Authority's opening of Caples Terrace, which is a transitional housing complex that serves youth 18 to 24 who have exited foster care and who were living doubled up or experiencing homelessness So they traditionally are just really hard to find and count. And because they were in Caples Terrace, which is transitional housing, so they're still actually considered homeless, even though they're in transitional housing. So we just were able to count them more. So this is something to keep an eye on, but it's not, please know that the young adults counted in this were in, or a majority of them were in transitional housing when they were counted. And then for the unaccompanied minors, it actually went down this year. And this is something that we're keeping an eye on. We don't know, we can't say yet if it's a trend, but it's definitely interesting data. So reflecting on these results, it seems like the point in time count trends match what is anecdotally being seen in the community. This 23% increase in people who are chronically homeless. I think that most of us who live and work and drive around our community have seen this. Typically families, youth, and people who are newer to homelessness go to greater lengths to be undetectable as being homeless. So that's why you just don't tend to see that as often. As far as seniors go in the community, it makes sense, because of the cost of living in our city and county. Nearly 100% of the seniors identified a lack of income as the reason for their homelessness. We know that Social Security and pensions are not keeping up with increasing rents and utilities and food costs, especially if you're living alone. And when somebody doesn't have a support system to keep them stable in housing, they have few options but to become homeless. And then, of course, among people who reported disabilities, over 40% also identified as having a mental illness. And that's also well aligned with community concerns. Many people living on the streets are ill, and it makes getting a job or making major life changes unrealistic when they're just simply surviving hour by hour. So, again, rents are just too high and incomes are too low. And when we asked people, what is your primary cause for becoming homeless, or what's the biggest barrier for you to becoming permanently housed, people indicated a lack of income or a lack of affordable housing. Nearly 200 people that we asked chose those responses, and a third of those people were employed. And, again, these answers to these questions were provided by people experiencing homelessness during the street count. So one other thing to note is just, as we all know, I don't have to tell you, since the point in time count, the world has changed quite a bit. And I do want to mention that the number of emergency shelter beds has increased considerably. This includes Share Orchards Inn reopening, which there's just an article in the paper today about. St. Paul Lutheran, the men's WHO shelter is remaining open now during non-winter months. Exchange Recovery opened some additional transitional housing. And in order to mitigate the impact of the COVID crisis, St. Andrew Lutheran and Share House Emergency Shelter Overflow remain open after the winter season. And additionally, Living Hope Church has opened a 20-tent sanctioned encampment. Emmanuel Lutheran Church opened up a 10th Safe Park location, and many of the Safe Park churches are already involved in increasing their capacity. Okay, so we are going to move to questions for our panel. So I'm going to start with Dale. And so Dale Whitley is the HMIS administrator for Council for the Homeless. And Dale, I'm wondering if you can speak to folks about the methodology involved with the point in time count, the volunteer effort that went into it, and why we do the point in time count and the purpose that it serves.
Yeah, so again, I'm Dale Whitley, the Homeless Management Information System Administrator and Coordinator for the point in time count. So the methods that we use for the point in time count are many and various. One of them is our homeless management information system. So any emergency shelter or transitional housing program that enters their data into our system, we're able to pull those numbers for the day of the count to find out who was in a shelter or housed through those programs on that day. Also, any the other services programs that aren't necessarily housing or shelter, but provide services, we're able to pull that information as well. We also have, as Laura mentioned previously, our big Project Homeless Connect event that goes on. It takes a lot of volunteers to pull off, but we see a lot of guests that come that day. So it's kind of a magnet event to get them to come to us, and everybody who attends completes a survey through that event. And we see, every year we see people who were, for one reason or another, only counted at that Project Homeless Connect event. They didn't touch our system in other ways. So that's one of the benefits of holding that, and seeing those, being able to collect information on those people as well. We also get information from our school district's homeless liaisons. They send me numbers on their students and families that are experiencing homelessness, and also our DV providers, which aren't allowed to enter information into our HMIS system. They send me information for their clients being sheltered as well. And then, of course, we have the Safe Park program that we're able to get information on those people that are staying in their cars at those churches on that night. And that's a really great piece of information to have, because those people are normally kind of hard to locate because they're living in their cars. But being able, when they're all collected into a church, it makes it, we're able to pull that off. So thanks, David, for coordinating that. And we also collect information from other non-HMIS service locations, such as food banks, libraries, or just any service location that provides services to homeless people but isn't connected to our HMIS system. And then a big piece of the count that requires a lot of the planning is our street count. So we have teams that go out into various regions around our county, and they're able to complete surveys with clients using a mobile app. We found that app makes it a lot easier to collect the information, and it's less intrusive than the old paper sheets that we used to have that would get wet and soggy out in the rain and the elements. So yeah, that app has been a great addition. And so those teams of volunteers are, made up of elected officials, people with homeless lived experience, and of course our amazing outreach workers that are out there year round doing this. They're a great resource to provide information on where they know encampments are and already have that connection with people as well. So it makes it easier to collect those surveys. And we also had a lot of just local community volunteers this year as well. It's been great. We put out some calls through social media and our website and through our continuum of care meetings to try and collect new volunteers, and we had a great response. That was awesome. So we had a couple trainings for those new volunteers as well. So we also had, the outreach workers were great at those to help inform people on what to expect. So the planning for that will start in November. We usually start up in November, and then we have a series of meetings where we all get together and try and find out what's different, what needs to change. Do we need more teams? Do we need to split up teams to produce a better count every year? We try to make it as successful as possible. We know that, like was previously mentioned, that it's always an undercount. I like to say that it's a minimum. We know that we're at least this many people counted on that day, but we try, we use the same methodologies, and so that's how we're able to, year to year, be able to track whether the numbers are, going up or down, how they're trending. And we do this because, well, it's required by HUD and by Commerce as part of our funding requirements, but also so we could do these report backs to our community, and we try to add additional questions beyond what's required, so that we can answer questions that our local community wants answered as well.
All right, thank you, Dale.
And so on this slide, you'll see some of the things, the methodologies for this year were We had outreach workers try to reach out to people to make them aware and informed that the count was going to happen. And we'll definitely, be trying to do that again next year. And we reached out to the Vancouver Police Department and the Clark County Sheriff to try and get to make sure that sweeps didn't happen on that day. We've had trouble with that before, and it's frustrating when it confounds our ability to produce the best numbers that we can. So efforts were made. We've definitely seen improvement in that in this last year's count from previous years. And like I mentioned, we conducted the surveys using the mobile app for the second year, and we'll try to expand that as well, because it really makes it easier to both collect the information and to report it out at the end of the year for deduplication purposes. And we added a couple new counting sites this year in East County and in Orchards, and we'll continue to look at any new ones that need to be added for next year as well.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so next up we have Jillian from SHARE. She is the Community Wellness Program Director for SHARE. She also directs the Talk and Trash and Women's Housing and Transition programs. So Jillian, can you please talk about your experience with conducting the point in time count, any observations that you have on unsheltered homelessness in particular, and also maybe tell folks about the remodel and temporary closure of Orchards Inn, and just kind of what's going on with that, but also how it also contributed to the increase in the unsheltered homelessness in this year's count.
Thank you, Laura. So as Dale was mentioning with the street count, SHARE takes on 2 of the zones to help out with the street count during the point in time count. And so we start with the planning process that Dale coordinates a couple months before, going to meetings, starting to talk about what sort of changes we might have for this year, whether the survey is looking the same, if anything has changed. Again, we were using the Counting Us app, which has been great, and our team has really appreciated the switch over to that and found it to be useful. So we had 2 different zones this year. We had our teams are made up of our street outreach workers and then a couple of our interns. And so they spread out during that day and go through the route through the zones. These are zones that our outreach team is familiar with and spends a lot of time in generally. And so they'll pretty familiar with areas where folks may be. Of course, there are, folks are moving around frequently, and so you're spending time looking to try to find everyone so we can get as complete of a count as possible. So as Laura was mentioning, the unsheltered count went up this year, which again I think is not surprising to any of us who are working with our outreach teams every day and seeing the number of people who are outside. I think around the point in time count, the areas my team was working in or around the waterfront and the downtown part of the downtown area. And for the few months, maybe up to 6 months or so before point in time count, we'd actually been seeing a decrease in the amount of people who were camping in those areas or living unsheltered in those zones. And currently, we're actually seeing quite an increase of people moving back into those areas, which is unrelated to the point in time count, I guess, but interesting. And then Laura also asked about how the family shelter renovation has impacted the point in time count. So SHARE runs 2 family shelters, Orchards Inn and Homestead, and towards the end of summer 2019, early fall, we closed Orchards Inn for renovations, and so that shelter was currently closed during the point in time count, and that's about 50 individuals who were not able to be accessing that shelter due to the renovations. And this was also around the time when we were starting to prepare to close Homestead, which is the other family shelter, so that shelter could be renovated as well. So we were not taking, I believe, not taking referrals at that time to moving. So as people were moving out of Homestead, we weren't filling their places. So certainly a decrease in the amount of sheltered families in our community because we were just down shelter beds. We are hoping within a few days that we will be reopening Orchards Inn with fully staffed and with all of the beds full, and we actually have an increase in beds after the renovation, and that will be the same when Homestead opens, hopefully later this summer. There'll be an increase in beds as well, which was part of the purpose of the renovations.
Great, thank you. All right, so next we've got Suzanne Straub from CMAR Community Services Northwest. Suzanne is the Behavioral Health Supervisor for Homeless Outreach at CMAR Community Health Centers, and she works with street outreach workers who most often serve those experiencing chronic homelessness. So Suzanne, can you please speak to outreach, street outreach and chronically homeless individuals? We know that there was an increase this year, and just kind of talk about your work in that area.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. So I work with three outreach teams. Two are outreach, just street outreach, and then the other one is the result of the True Blood class action lawsuit. And so they have a targeted list of folks that they're working with. But the other teams, my Pathfinder team, they work with folks that are addicted to opioids, and they don't have to necessarily be homeless. They can be housed, looking for housing, homeless, living in the shelter, whatever the situation is. They don't necessarily have to be homeless. And then I have two separate path programs, but they basically do the same thing. So they just do the street outreach. They outreach folks that have mental illness and who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. I also supervise our SOAR coordinator, who her role is to train other social workers in the community on the process for applying for disability, using a special process that is targeted towards folks that are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless and dealing with a mental illness. So we kind of have a variety of programs going on, but all that said, all of my outreach teammates participate in the point in time count. They track their services provided in HMIS, and they do a phenomenal job of housing people, getting them connected to food benefits, medical insurance, do housing referrals, housing assessments, you name it, they can probably do it. As far as the increase this year, I think that, as you said earlier, Laura, I think that the biggest problem is just the lack of affordable housing. I mean, I hear it over and over again, not just in Clark County, but just in other meetings throughout the state, that there's just a need for more affordable housing for folks, especially those that are on disability, and SSI is less than $800 a month. And how do you rent an apartment for $800 a month? And so there's just kind of a need for that affordable housing.
Great, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so next we have David Bilby to talk about Safe Park, Project Homeless Connect, and kind of how he has seen the rise in the seniors experiencing homelessness population. So David, can you speak about that? What are your observations on impacts to the senior demographic through your work with Safe Park and Project Homeless Connect?
Yeah, you bet. Definitely through Project Homeless Connect, we see a lot of older individuals who do need some help, and that's obviously being represented in the numbers. but through Safe Park alone, right now, through 10 different churches, we have 40 cars at all the different churches. And about a third are people over 50. And that's slowly increasing. Just this week, I've done 3 intakes with single women who are over 55. And so it's obviously we have special areas for women who are considered more vulnerable and afraid of the situation. So we're definitely seeing it. Churches are picking up the baton as far as serving the older individuals as well within the program, and we see a varied response or a varied need. Sometimes it is somebody thought they were going to have more in their pension, and we have a family that a husband and wife that has been married for 42 years, living in their van right now, and they thought their pension was covered, but at the end of the day, whether it was fraud or whatever happened, I'm not really sure. They don't have that income that they thought they were going to have, and so we have a varied population that are over even the retirement age, and Social Security is great, and so there's a lot of the situations though that families just can't do it. We also do have a lot of younger families that are a part of the program, and before the whole COVID crisis happened, about 60% of those who were not of retirement age were also full-time employed as well. And so we see through Safe Park, it's not just the older families that are having this issue. It's the people my age, like, well, I'm 50, but younger that have full-time employment that still need the help. And so yeah, right now we have about 30 spots that are open that we can place, and we have 5 new referrals from the last couple of days that we're trying to get a hold of. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we're trying to do and how we're trying to solve for this kind of a crisis. So
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so now just to make sure everyone's still with us, we're going to have an audience poll. So on your screens shortly, you should see poll come up. And first, I'd just like to get to know everybody here and tell me about yourself. So if you could choose which option is best fits you. And I apologize, it only gave me 5 options. So, but yeah, I'll give you just a few seconds here. Okay. Looks like we've got a good mix here of interested community members, majority so far at 39%. We've got 13% faith community leaders, 22% homeless service providers, and 26% homeless volunteers and advocates, which I love to see. So thank you everybody for that. And we'll move on to the next poll here. So far, based on what you've heard today, what has been most surprising or unexpected about these point in time count numbers? I'll just give you a few seconds here. Oh, I need to launch it. There we go. And while you're doing that, I'll just do another reminder that if you'd like to ask questions, use that the chat feature, and we'll have Sarah, after we're done with these polls, we're going to start doing some Q&A with our panel. Okay, so yeah, it's looking like about half of you, a little over half, are surprised that overall homelessness has decreased, and according, between this year and last year, and the increase in the number of people who are chronically homeless and seniors experiencing homeless, and yeah, and then a good split between decreasing family homelessness and that people of color are overrepresented in the homeless population. But by and large, most of you are surprised about overall the decrease. Okay, and we got one more for you here. So if you were to create a new shelter in our community for folks, what population would you like to see served based on these trends? Just a couple more seconds here. Some votes still coming in. Okay. So it looks like, a lot of you would like to see shelter for people who are chronically homeless, majority at 44%. We've got an even split at 20% each with single women and families, and then another even split at 8% between people of color and youth experiencing homelessness. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. So now I want to open it up. We've got about 12, 13 minutes here to ask questions with our panel. Sarah, do you want to start us off with some questions?
Yeah, of course. So we definitely have a theme going on with a few questions. So I'll start with the other questions first. So one question was, during the count, how is it made sure the person is an individual or part of a family?
Who wants to take that?
I'll take that. Yeah, so part of the survey it asks whether it's going to be a household count or a single person count. So that right off the bat in the Counting Us app, you're selecting whether it's just a single person or a member of a household. And also on the paper sheets as well, it has places to mark just the one person, single household, or additional family members as well to be counted as a household.
Awesome. Next question, why did Share renovate shelters during the winter months instead of the warmer months?
Sure. So both of Share's family shelters are owned by the Vancouver Housing Authority. So the ultimate decision of what happens with the building is up to the Vancouver Housing Authority. The renovations were supposed to begin earlier than they did and be completed earlier than they did. And from my understanding, that was a combination of having difficulties obtaining a contractor, having a contractor and having that contractor pull out and then having to find another one. They had a grant, the Vancouver Housing Authority had a grant they were using. And so it can sometimes be difficult to put that kind of funding to construction costs and getting a contractor. And then along the way, they've run into various issues. And once they opened up all the walls, these are very old buildings, and they found a lot more issues than expected, as is common in construction projects. And so these projects were originally supposed to be completed prior to the end of 2019, I believe. And so they just got behind schedule.
Definitely happens. Next question, was the navigation center counted?
Yes, the navigation center was counted. Yeah, we coordinated with them where they provided us a list of everybody who visited the navigation center.
Perfect. All right, and our next couple questions are directed towards, actually before I go that, to follow up with the navigation question, do you have any idea how many people were counted at the navigation center?
Just off the top of my head, no, I don't. It was a long list of clients. I think it might have been almost 150 clients, but there's a lot of deduplication that happens because, people who visit the navigation center may have also attended the Project Homeless Connect, may have also been counted on the street count. So, it's hard to say how many people were uniquely counted at just the navigation center. I'd have to go back and find that.
Okay. And now to those last couple questions. So one question is, why don't we just lower the rents? And to add on that, if rents increasing is a big reason for why more people are becoming homeless, why isn't more being done to prevent massive rent increases in the first place? I feel like that's a good Laura question.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the answer to that is boils down to advocacy and definitely like getting in the ears of our policymakers at a local level and at a state level and probably even a federal level, to be truthful. There are many voices competing for policy, especially in Olympia, in terms of rent pricing and practices and in tenancy. And so, I think it's a good question. It's a larger systemic issue that, we can address through advocacy, through data, through things like global pandemics. So yeah, I don't know if Kate has anything to add about that, but that's kind of what I would say about that.
Going to call me out. Hello, my name is Kate Budd, and I serve as Executive Director with the Council for the Homeless, and I wanted to make sure these fine folks had top billing for this event. Thanks to all of you who joined us. I really appreciate Laura's point, as well as the person who asked the question, in that there are enormous challenges that our community has around the cost of rent, as well as the lack of affordable housing that exists. We are very appreciative of the City of Vancouver and their Affordable Housing Fund. It continues to create new affordable housing options for people of various income levels. Our greatest challenge right now is that the income of those who we work with, like Suzanne mentioned earlier, tend to be the minimal level of people who receive Social Security, or may just be the people who receive aged, blind, and disabled support, who get $195 a month. And so where our opportunity is to provide affordable housing for folks who have very, very low incomes. And not only is that individual homes, but it also could be shared living. And I think that's another key piece of the solutions to people being houseless, is how do we provide opportunities to allow people to connect so that they can share housing, and how do we create housing that is conducive to people sharing space, where everyone can have their own environments. And so there's a lot of different ways to address creating more housing, and a part of that is sharing your concern with elected officials, as well as your ideas, because there are a lot of innovative things going on in this community. We want to help support those so that more can continue to occur.
Great, thank you, Kate.
All right, so we have about 4 more minutes for questions, so I've got a few left. One question is, do we ask any questions about healthcare access and health-related difficulties they face during homelessness with the PIT count? And if yes, is that data publicly available?
I think as part of the point in time count survey for unsheltered people, I don't know that there is a healthcare question. We could certainly look at adding that for next year, just like we've added some other ones that we wanted to answer in the community. Within our HMIS system, so for those programs, those clients who are in a shelter, transitional housing, that definitely is one that gets answered for every single client. So we do have that information for people in emergency shelter or transitional.
Is that information that's public anywhere?
I mean, we could certainly publish it in a report. Yeah.
All right. Are there specific steps the county council does to help?
So this is Kate Budd again, and the reality is that the county is the primary funder of our homeless crisis response system. And so they receive dollars directly from the local document recording fees. So if someone buys a home or someone refinances a home, then a portion of that document recording fee stays local with the county, and then a portion goes up to the state, then gets reallocated to each county through an equation that they use. And so it means that the county does an enormous amount across our system, from paying for outreach to emergency shelter, to planning and data coordination, to permanent supported housing, to rapid rehousing, and also rent assistance. And so while you know, they are the primary funder, there's always opportunities for them to do more. We are unique here in this community in that there are no administrative dollars, general admin, from the county that goes into the homeless crisis response system. And so that itself could be an opportunity. How do we increase the resources is around advocacy. And the difficulty is that, then the county needs to look at, where do they find these dollars? And there's enormous competition for general administrative dollars. First and foremost, just trying to fill the gaps that have been created by COVID. So, as far as the county doing things, enormous number of things, and they have been doing that for quite a while. The city of Vancouver as well is a large funder of the homeless crisis response system, and they, do that also through outreach and emergency shelter and rapid rehousing programs, and recently having funded a tent encampment through Living Hope Church.
Thanks, Kate. So we have 2 questions left. One of them I will definitely throw out. The other one I'm just going to answer really quickly. So one of the questions was whether or not the people at the Navigation Center were asked the same questions as other locations. And I know that answer is yes. The survey is the same for everybody that is counted. And then our final question before Laura wraps up today for our call to action is, are we doing anything in anticipation of an increase in homelessness due to the current economic situation?
So this is Kate again, and I will say yes, because we know that people who were stably housed in January and February are now unstable because they haven't been able to work in March, in April, in May. And so as a result, there's an enormous amount of rent assistance that is flowing into the community. Most notably, and thanks to the efforts of the Community Foundation of Southwest Washington and their willingness to fundraise and share their dollars with not only established nonprofits, but also culturally specific groups, so that those dollars can be shared as equitably as possible. We also know that some of those people who are unstable today may fall into homelessness. We were just celebrating earlier that the eviction moratorium was pushed out until August 1 by the governor. While I very much recognize that that poses enormous challenges to landlords, I also know that tenants are breathing a very large sigh of relief. And what this does is it gives tenants an opportunity to get back to work as we move into phase 2 and be able to earn dollars so that they can pay their rent before this moratorium ends. Some folks may not be able to go back to work, and then we know that they may fall into homelessness if they don't have a strong support system. And so with that, we are looking at how to allocate dollars that are coming into the community. On the federal level, there was additional emergency solution grants or ESG funds that were provided to the state and then allocated to Clark County. How those dollars will be used at this point, I don't know, but those are additional dollars. I'm also aware that there are additional HEN dollars, or Homeless and Essential Needs Program dollars. That's a program that's through SHARE. And those additional dollars are there to support people who are experiencing homelessness and have either short-term or newer disabilities and are trying to get onto Social Security. And then lastly, there are CARES Act dollars that have gone into communities in order to help them address needs of COVID. And those dollars have the potential of providing rent assistance to people who are in need. And so that's very much an advocacy opportunity within all jurisdictions here in Clark County, is to ask your elected officials, please consider providing rent assistance. So as new dollars come into the community, we're definitely considering where the greatest needs are, and then allocating as appropriate. We're hoping that it's not nearly as bad as we predict, though we want to make sure we're as prepared as possible. And just kudos to the community for showing what really is possible, because we have done incredible things during this COVID crisis, most notably doubling the number of shelter beds that we ordinarily have during the summer months. So thank you.
Thanks again, Kate. So we do still have a couple unanswered questions. I definitely recommend reaching out to Laura or Dale, probably just individually via email to get some of that information. But we're going to move back on to Laura, who's got some closing call to action statements.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, and thank you everybody for your great questions. I will say this is being recorded, and I believe I'm going to have a log of the chat when I'm all is said and done with this. This is my first time doing this, so bear with me a little bit, but our hope is that we will have a record of this and can get back to you. So thank you for the good dialogue and questions. This is really good. Yes, going back to our agenda here. I just want to leave you tonight. This is a lot of information. You may be wondering, what can I do? And so, our call to action for our community, first and foremost, especially given, what's going on in our society right now, we can start by ending systemic racism. We're not going to end homelessness without ending systemic racism. You can see how disproportionately impacted people of color are by homelessness, poverty, healthcare disparities, all of it. It's something, I think that's a good starting point. Again, developing and advocating for the development of affordable housing for people with very low incomes. Advocate, like we talked about earlier. You can actually sign up to be on our housing advocacy list on our website. And I think also, if all goes well, you'll receive an invitation to share your email address with us after this webinar to sign up as well. Share resources, share information. We're really lucky in Clark County that we have such a strong coalition of people who want to help, and we have a strong grassroots coalition of groups providing basic needs and shelter, and we have our service providers providing shelter and housing and transitional housing. We've got such a wide range of ways to address things, and I think if all of us working together and sharing the resources and information that we have is really important. Bust those stigmas. There's so much stigma around being somebody who's experiencing homelessness. Share the data that you've learned, that you know about, that resonates with you. People who are experiencing homelessness are simultaneously some of the most overly judged and also the most invisible people in our community. So the more that we can do as people who are concerned and learn more about this, just sharing that information. Of course, there's always a need to volunteer, and I'll tell you, in the last couple of months, volunteers have stepped up in ways that not only have been just a huge personal lift, for them, but also, people putting themselves out there, safety-wise, and health-wise. So can't thank our volunteers enough. And if you're interested in volunteering, there are just definitely so many ways you can get involved, from providing basic needs to, helping with, collect donations. I mean, there's all kinds of things to do out there. And we have a volunteer tab on our website. Actually, we have a COVID-19 page on our website that's got actually specific volunteer opportunities for agencies serving people through this COVID crisis who are experiencing housing insecurity or homelessness or food insecurity. And then lastly, just be kind. We can all benefit from that. So let's see, we're coming right up on 7 o'clock. We are planning to do this every month, so we're working hard to plan the next one for July. So we hope to see you then. We will definitely share out the link for that, the registration link. Yeah, just I encourage you to go to our website, check out our point in time count data tab. It's got lots of good information. We also have a COVID-19 resource tab. And if you know of anybody who you think might benefit from, who is experiencing housing insecurity or homelessness, they can always call the housing hotline listed here. So I want to thank you all, and stay safe and healthy, and I hope to see you again next month.